Welcome to Parenting Decoded, a podcast for practical approaches to parenting. I'm Mary Eschen. I'm so happy to be back recording my 50th podcast episode. It's been a fun and fulfilling journey to be with all of you, but today I'm asking two people who have greatly influenced my parenting to be my guests. I am blessed and honored to have on the show my sons, Michael and Joe, to share sort of a report card on my parenting over their years with me. It's a bit scary for me, but I'm anxious to hear what they have to say in hopes that you can learn how changing to a healthier parenting model, even if your kids are in their teen and tween years, is a great investment toward your future as a parent and as a family as a whole. I started my journey with Love and Logic parenting techniques about 12 years ago now, when my boys were 12 and 14. You're going to hear my interview with them from questions submitted by my Facebook parenting group called Parenting Decoded. Here we go. Hi, Michael and Joe. Why don't you each introduce yourselves? Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Eschen. I'm Mary's oldest son. I don't know what to say. Oh, I'm 26.
And
Yeah.
do you have a job?
Oh, I'm a mechanical engineer, and I live in Seattle.
Great. All right, Joe, how about you?
I'm Joe Eschen. I am a software engineer in Seattle, Washington, and I'm 24.
Cool. As the audience can tell, I live in Silicon Valley, so I have remote children now. It's quite a privilege and fun. Okay, so here we're going to move on to the interview with these questions. The first question for you guys is, did you notice when your mom, me, started using Love and Logic parenting techniques on you? Did you notice?
I think we did notice because I think you kind of announced it. Like, I remember energy drain a lot, and we made lots of jokes about energy drains.
Uh-huh.
It was like they were scary. You didn't want them. And then sometimes we'd dish it back to you too. We'd be like, "Oh, energy drain," or whatever. So I think that, and like the natural consequences part of it, I feel like I remember all that. But I also think you just talked about it more because you were teaching it to other people. So we just like chatted about it.
Yeah.
I think you're really open with like us, kind of right out of the gate. You're like, I'm trying a new parenting style, and it's called Love and Logic, and here we go. And I feel like from the get-go, you were, in communication with us about it, and you were trying to be open with us, and it was a ride for all of us because we were the ones being parented, you were parenting, and we were kind of going through the journey together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it was no secret that you were starting to do Love and Logic.
Yeah.
Okay, here's the next question, you guys. Do you feel like expectations were clear and that consequences were adequate or too severe?
I think that expectations were set extremely well, and consequences also were not too severe. And I think that you did a good job of making sure, and that's part of like the natural, like what Michael just said a bit ago, of like the natural consequences of Love and Logic, or the natural consequences of being a human. And like, oh, you forgot to do something, well, you don't get that anymore, or whatever form and shape that takes in terms of consequences. It's like, it's a much more natural approach in terms of learning to be a responsible human and forging your own path through life and making sure that we are raising kids who are responsible. So.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about you, Michael? Any comments on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the expectations were clear, but I also think at the same time, like, they were just self-explanatory. It was like, oh, if you didn't do your laundry, then you didn't have laundry. Or like, if you didn't make your lunch, I think was the best example of it. Then like, well, you didn't have lunch to eat. That's a bummer for you. Or if you forgot to bring it to school, then you could call mom to bring it, but then you don't know what the energy drain is going to be.
Energy drain roulette.
Yeah. We were talking about it's like kind of a form of gambling in a way, but like not really. But you just didn't know what your consequence was going to be, but you just knew it wasn't great. You weren't like, oh, that's so mean. Like, I don't get my phone because I didn't bring my lunch or something. But it was like, now I got to go do, I don't know, some random task for you that you wanted us to do, or you wanted someone to do and you didn't want to do it. So it's like clean the gutters. Although that sounds pretty severe. But
oh yeah, Michael, you were the clean the gutters. In my podcast, you're the clean the gutters guy.
I am. I don't remember actually cleaning the gutters.
What? It's one of my best parenting stories. I'm glad it wasn't so severe in your mind that it scarred you for life. That's great.
Was it an energy drain or was it my specialty chore that I had to do?
It was a major energy drain.
Oh, what was it for?
We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Just think the redheaded kid and you.
The redheaded kid. Clayton and I. What do we do? We should get Clayton on here to defend himself in the 75th episode.
Anyway, how about the next question? What did you learn most from me growing up in the way I parented you?
You just learn natural consequences. And I guess you just learn to be responsible, because if you're not, then it probably sucks. And if you decide you don't want to be responsible, then there's usually something as a result of that, but it's your fault. You're not trying to blame someone else, I guess, for your own problems. I don't know. Just what do you have to say?
I learned a lot about keeping a level head. As a kid, I was kind of deemed the sensitive one in the family, or the emotional one in the family.
Were you deemed, or was it a fact?
See, here we go. It lives on today, for sure. But yeah, I think one of the a huge thing that I learned was keeping a level head in all kinds of situations is super duper important to help yourself think through it, as well as make sure that you're hearing anybody else out that that you're interacting with, and leaving room for yourself to have space to think. When we get a hot head, you don't really think clearly and things like that. And I think that you and Dad both did a good job of not getting hot heads and being calm in situations where I might have been yelling, kicking and screaming, trying to get my way, and then you guys would, you'd be like, I'm not going to engage with that. And it drove me mad. I as a kid, I was like, I can win if I can get them into a screaming match. But, you guys did an excellent job of not engaging. And I think I learned from that significantly.
This one I really want to know the answer to. Were you able to ever outsmart your mom and get away with anything? That you want to confess on air here?
My answer is yes, but I can't remember specific instances.
Ah,
I also want to say, we talked about this question too, and we were like, what? Yeah, we were like, what did we outsmart? It was we felt as though we were outsmarting it. I think we couldn't come up with any concrete answers as to yes, we did this, and this got us past, and you guys should watch out for X, Y, and Z so that your kids don't do it either.
I think that maybe you just would forget about executing on an energy drain or something like that, or you would do our laundry for us on a one-off because it was in the way or something.
Yeah, and we felt like we had won in that.
I had a weak moment where I gave in to you.
Yeah, you had a soft spot for us.
Yeah, you had a soft spot.
Do.
It's you loved us or something,
Yeah,
I do love.
But you're teaching everyone else the techniques that they need, and also, I think that they worked really well.
I think though too, there's. I mean, that being said, though, there's something to be said for having that soft spot. They are your kids at the end of the day, and I think everybody loves spoiling the people that they love to some degree, and there's nothing wrong with occasionally splashing out and doing.
I also think, going back to the last question about what did you learn most from the Love with Logic, is that I almost feel like I didn't learn anything because you just learn it all without realizing it.
Yeah, that's a great way to phrase that.
Yeah, you don't realize that you're learning to be a more responsible adult.
Because I let you be responsible.
Yeah.
I trusted you to be responsible.
I think so, yeah.
You had us learn it on our own and in our own terms. You didn't have to point to a book and say, here is where it states, be responsible. Or you didn't have us watch a video and be like, this is responsibility. It was make sure you bring your lunch every day because you might be hungry if you don't. So
Yeah. Okay.
And I'm sure there are other things where like maybe you would have said, "Oh, do that," and then we would have been like, "No," and then because we didn't want to do it or something, and maybe we didn't need to do it in the end, and now we got to learn that as opposed to just being annoyed with you for making us do it. I feel like balancing the checkbook is one that comes to mind.
Oh,
It was like you
yeah.
got to balance your checkbook. Like literally, why do I have to balance
Why?
this checkbook?
Because if
It's
you want
online.
if you want your money for
Yeah,
the
that's
month,
why I had to balance
that's
it.
why. It's like,
But
this
in
is
real life,
mom's boundary.
as an adult, I do not balance my checkbook, and I've never had a problem with it.
Michael, how do you know
Yeah.
if you haven't had credit card fraud? Come on.
Well, that's different than your checkbook.
Yeah, I can also say I have not balanced my checkbook ever.
Yeah,
After
yeah.
not being incentivized via
Yeah, via cash.
via cash.
But you know what?
Well,
There's a natural consequence of not getting cash for balancing your checkbook. You're gonna do it.
You're gonna run out soon.
yeah. And for my listeners, this is covered in my podcast that's about money and kids. Is the example of how I gave money to my children to teach them budgeting lessons, and it worked really well. Both of you got to college and could handle money in a really great manner, and I was always really proud of you guys for doing that. So those checkbook lessons, I know you didn't like them, but you did want your money each month, so you did it for the consequence of not having.
I think we learned a lot too because like I actually know how to write a check now. And like I've known
I
that
do,
from a young
yeah.
age, and I've encountered people in my life today that like don't know how to write a check, and they're like 25, and I'm like,
Yeah.
huh.
It's like,
So
well, there's always Venmo.
yeah,
Honestly, that's all you have to do now. Yeah.
yeah, you don't need
Exactly.
checks. Yeah.
Exactly. Nobody, I don't even need them. So, you guys, the next question has to do with your sibling relationship. How did you learn to communicate and or accept each other's differences as brothers so that there would be less conflict in the household? And did mom have any influence over that? As I recall, you didn't always get along that well.
For those who don't know, Michael and I used to not be the best of friends. We used to kick and scream, and me, the emotional child I was, I used to yell at the top of my
Thank you
lungs.
for addressing it. Yeah.
Of course, absolutely. I used to yell at the top of my lungs, saying like, "Oh, like I hate you," like, "Oh my gosh." And I can only imagine that my parents went to bed at night being like, "What are we gonna do about Joseph and Michael? Like, there's something's wrong." So, I guess to answer the question, I think like at a young age, obviously there were trying times, and then I think there came a point in time where we started to enter different phases of life, and we kind of like went down our own path. And like I had my own friends. I also went to a different school. Michael had his own friends going to a different school, and we had our own hobbies. We had our own like extracurricular activities, and we just kind of like coexisted for a while there. And then I think that like you guys did a good job facilitating us and like facilitating our hobbies and making sure that we were happy in what we were doing. And I really appreciate you guys for that. And I think once we got to high school was so like communication broke down as young kids. Communication kind of stayed silent or minimal as like growing up. And then once we got to high school, Michael and I are 2 years apart. So when he was a senior in high school, I was a sophomore. And I think around that time we started to realize like we have some commonalities in like hobbies and what we like to do, and we realized that we also have we'd like spending time together. And I think I realized like, oh, he's gonna go off to college. Like, what does that mean? Like, I won't get to see him as much. Like, that's weird. He's lived with me my whole life. And I think I started to like kind of I guess like as a younger brother, I was like, man, like my older brother's going away. Like, I want to be.
So the question though is like, did I help facilitate something? I mean, I think I kind of agree with you. You matured and you guys started respecting each other, especially when it came to high school and then beyond. But I don't, it's like I teach parents about, how to deal with sibling conflict and stuff like that. And I wasn't that informed when you guys were little. So I don't think I did as good a job. And by the time I did move my parenting needle more to be more diplomatic and more like a consultant parent, that you guys were already moving there on your own. So
I think so too. Yeah. Just a very nice heartfelt story.
I think also though, like a lot of your students that we have heard about, like we know that you've taught classes for people who are like 2 a.m. or 2 a.m. excuse me, 2 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old, and it's a completely different experience when you are trying to teach someone from that young of an age these ideas of responsibility and everything, and you can kind of jump in and steer a little harder, or like you can put like a little bit of wind in the sail, and then that will end up changing the course of their trajectory a lot more than maybe already doing so. When Michael and I was in middle school. I was 12, like you mentioned. I was in middle school when Michael was a freshman in high school, and that's when all of this started. And so, yeah, like I feel like you're saying, we were maturing, we were more grown up than a couple of your other.
So
audience.
I don't get an A+ for the sibling rivalry part, but I have a lot of ideas for parents now. How about
you don't get an F either, though. You did an excellent job.
Thank you.
You did an excellent job.
What
How
do you tell
about
parents that have rival children?
What do I tell them?
Yeah, what do you tell them to do?
It's in my podcast on sibling
shoot.
rivalry, of course.
I gotta go listen to the podcast of
Yeah.
Sibling Rivalry.
Yeah, my sons will someday have children of their own and have to listen to them later. The next question, though, is: do you feel confident? And did I have an influence over how you're able to make your decisions and be confident about the decisions that you're making in your adult lives now?
I am not sure that Love with Logic impacted how I feel with making decisions today. I don't know. Maybe it does. But I do
For those
generally
of you
feel
who
confident.
can't see, our mom is making a wide-eyed face at Michael's response currently. Continue, Michael.
I don't know what the wide-eyed face means, but I do generally feel confident when I'm making decisions, and I think I generally feel confident about my bigger life decisions than my tiny ones, like do I want to buy an iPad? But I don't know. I guess like back to Love and Logic with the natural consequences of doing. You how to make decisions. Like you have the choice to make a decision of doing the responsible thing or not, and then dealing with the fallout of doing the irresponsible thing to make it up.
I think, though, to chime in, like, it subconsciously influenced all of that. Like, it's not like a very direct, like, we sat down with mom and dad and they were like, here's how to make decisions, and like decisions 101. It was a lot more like to answer the question, I'm very similar to Michael, where like I feel confident in large life things that I've made, like deciding to move to Seattle or deciding I'm unhappy in my job, I want to get a different job. And I definitely think that confidence came from some kind of training and feeling of responsibility through lots of repetition in much, much smaller things. Like, do I want to get up earlier to pack my lunch today? And it sounds so small and not like something really negligible, but like, I think also like it had its own influence in the course of our lives. Similar to Michael, it probably wasn't the only thing. Like, I think you and Dad are great role models in terms of being confident in choices and making responsible choices. Yeah, I think like it's kind of a mix,
And in my podcast, I talk a lot about letting kids, which is what I definitely practice with you guys, letting you own your own stuff so that you get the confidence in your own ability to choose the right thing that's for you that day. And your ability to learn that there's oftentimes multiple choice, that either answer could be fine and you just have to know how to pick. And I think a lot of helicopter parents and drill sergeant parents out there today interrupt that natural growth cycle of parents trusting that their kids can learn to make their own decisions. That you guys, I gave you lots of decisions, and Joe, you especially, I am so thankful that I learned what I have learned, because I was interrupting your cycle all the time when you were little, interrupting and making sure that you had the right play dates and making sure that you had your lunch at school. And I'd run to school and bring you whatever you'd forget. And it's like, oh, what did I just train you to do? To not even think about what the consequences of your poor decisions were. And so in middle school, I was able to say, like, this is not helping Joe. And it really helped mature you in ways, I feel, that have been really healthy for you, because you have made some great decisions going forward when I stopped being a helicopter parent, which I talk about in my podcast of like, I am a recovering helicopter parent, and thank God my children can benefit from that. The next question, we're getting towards the end. Would you choose to raise your own children using techniques that are like love and logic techniques when you become parents?
Especially like this question because of the I don't even know, is it an article that you used?
It's the lack of the choice.
It's the when you
when
become
you
a parent.
will have children, so that I can be a grandma, please.
All that learning to make decisions is just out the window here. Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely will use love and logic on children if I have them. There's just so many positives from it, and I don't know what your other options are really. We're just so inundated with love and logic. Or not, I guess inundated is a bad word, but like
I brainwashed you.
Yeah, love and logic is all we know about parenting techniques, given that like we don't have kids, so we haven't done any research on how to be a better parent. And it just seems really great. So like, why would I go look for anything else?
It's such a part of who we are. And like when I would hear about like other people's parents and like how they would talk to them or like their dynamics, or I would witness it if I'm on a play date at someone's house, I'm like, man, like, I don't know, that's just like, that's not my parents. And thinking back on it in the moment as a kid, you're not really paying attention. But like thinking back on it for me, I'm like, I definitely want to, if I do have kids, raise kids with love and logic, because I think that it's a way to, make responsible, sensible, humans who can carry themselves through life and also make big impacts on other people. So I think that's super important.
Now that you two are adults, looking back on your child and teen years, what do you appreciate now that you didn't back then about your parenting skills?
As I said before, the level-headedness that you were carrying yourself with was something that, like, talk about grinding my gears as a kid, or like, absolutely, just like, I was like bursting with rage. I was like, oh my gosh, like the choice that you made consciously to not engage was something that in the moment I did not appreciate at all. I was unappreciative to the nth degree. I was I was so furious. But looking back, it was absolutely like the best thing. And I think like as a parent, empathizing from that perspective, I am not a parent right now, and I don't plan to be for quite some time.
Will you be when you're a parent?
Unclear. Unclear.
I'm not going to helicopter you for that.
Okay, thank you. But yeah, so if I'm a parent, like, and I'm trying to empathize here, I can only imagine how difficult that is in that moment. Like you have a kid kicking and screaming, being upset at something that just happened that maybe you have said no, and this has caused said reaction. And the choice to disengage is so difficult, I can only imagine. But I feel like a lot of times it was a good choice. Or to engage and say, you're being unreasonable, and like you're yelling and screaming, like this is not a conversation. This is not a way in which you talk to people. This is like, come back to me when you're ready. I'm happy to have this conversation, but not like this. So I think that was just, that's a huge one for me.
Cool. Ready for the last question?
That's a different. Oh no, I didn't get
Michael?
to answer.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Michael
I'm sorry.
I feel like that's a perspective on love and logic that I didn't have, because I think I wasn't the one, or I wasn't the type of kid.
Michael
to,
was a
kick and
golden
scream.
child.
I was just pretty amazing. That's what I'm trying to say here. Really,
like wow.
yeah,
I was so blessed.
You were blessed. Yeah. But anyways, I feel like I probably didn't appreciate at the time the whole natural consequence thing, or not being able to say, hey mom, I forgot my lunch, can you bring it to me, and have no consequence for that. But I think now that's probably really important for how I make lots of decisions, especially when you're balancing two things of like, well, if I do this, then this will happen, or if I do this, this will happen. I guess it gives you the confidence to make decisions and like deal with those potential consequences or outcomes from them, because I got to practice it for so long on much more minor things that like didn't really matter.
Yeah.
in the
and
grand scheme of things.
both of you are amazing decision makers. I am so proud of you. Last question. What was the most impactful thing I did as a parent with you guys?
Michael, you go first.
I don't know. Did we talk about this one? I don't remember.
I think we did. I have an answer if you would like
okay.
some time to ruminate.
I mean, honestly, I feel like so many of these questions are like a different way of phrasing, did you like Love with Logic? And do you think you're great because of it? Which is totally fine. And they're trying to get a different point of it. But
well, these people
my
ask
answer
the
for
questions
most of them-
independently.
I know they did, yeah. But like, I think my answer for most of them, and this one as well, is like the natural consequence aspect of the Love with Logic. Or parenting with, is it Love and Logic? Oh, it's Love and Logic.
It's just
but parenting with Logic.
It's just good parenting. It isn't necessarily owned by Love and Logic. It was just a class that I happened to start teaching. So it's just really good sound parenting to let kids make decisions and own their consequences.
And like at the time, I don't know, it could be annoying, but I think in the grand scheme of it all, now that I'm an adult, it's all super helpful and impactful.
Yeah, I think one of the things, or I think like the major thing, this one is hard for me to answer. For me, it's the most impactful thing that I think you did was to make me feel supported and backed in everything that I did. And even if maybe it wasn't something that you necessarily agreed with, I think that I felt that you respectfully you were always there on my side, like on my side of the court. And whether it be sports, whether it be, or I feel like sports is really applicable. So I played many sports growing up. I played soccer, baseball, basketball, you name it, I probably played it, except for hockey. I never tried hockey.
Did you play lacrosse?
No, well, a little bit at a summer camp I did. At a summer camp I did. But essentially, like the point being of like you guys were very, very supportive of anything that I was trying to do at any given point in time, and you made it so we were very privileged to have resources to be able to go to camps and go to get coaching, like private coaching potentially if I really liked it. But you guys were also, you did research and you asked your friends and parents about like, hey, what else what other things are you doing? If our son wants to get better, how can we, help in the best way that we can? And I think that it is a fine line to walk between like being a helicopter parent and being like extremely supportive. But I think that you guys did do a great job of being extremely supportive. I know you reference yourself as a recovering helicopter parent, and though you are, I do think that you were still able to be supportive in many moments, and I think that really impacted me and really carried me on in my life and how I want to like impact other people as well.
Cool. Well, thank you, boys, for helping Mom out tonight. And it's been a blast, and I love your enthusiasm and your support for what I do and taking your time out of your lives to help me on this podcast. Parents.
Hey, Mom, thanks for being such an amazing parent.
Can
we give you a report card?
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Yeah, can you give us a drum roll?
Yeah, drum roll, please.
I give A+.
A+. Down the line.
Plus.
You name a field, A+. You name another field, A+. They don't even have to know the name of the field, then it's an A+.
You guys are so sweet. Parents, I hope you've got some perspective from my silly boys on what the long-term impact on your kids can be if you invest in upping your parenting game now, no matter where you are in your journey, if your kids are young or older. You can have amazing relationships in the long run if you head towards being a consultant parent instead of a helicopter or dual sergeant or some combination of both. If you'd like help with any parenting issues, just email me, mary@parentingdecoded.com. Feel free to join my Facebook group. It's also called Parenting Decoded. Or if you'd like private coaching sessions, send me an email. I'd be happy to set something up on Zoom. I also have a YouTube channel, in case you don't know that. What a surprise. It's called Parenting Decoded, where all my lectures are, as well as a few other topics. That's all for now. Have a blessed rest of your day.